This is the Laravel News Podcast, your one-stop podcast to find out about Laravel-related news, tutorials, packages, and more. Here are your hosts, Eric Barnes and Jack Frew.
Hello and welcome to the Laravel News Podcast. I am Eric Barnes.
And I'm Jack Frew. Eric, we've got another special episode for our listeners. Do you want to tell us about it?
Yeah, so LaraconEU is this week. It's going to be back in Amsterdam, and it's going to be pretty fantastic from everything I've heard.
I've heard the same, and we have a special guest on the podcast today. We're going to be interviewing Shawn McCool, who is kind of the organizer of that conference. He's going to tell us all about it, including how big it is and a little bit about the venue and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's exciting. I think I read that this is the biggest LaraconEU conference that they've had yet, so it's amazing.
Yeah, it's huge. It's amazing how big these are getting. Eric, before we get into that interview, do you want to tell us about Shippo?
Yeah, so this week our sponsor is Shippo. It's the API and dashboard for all your shipping needs. So basically, you integrate with their API, and then from their API, it connects to all these different shipping carriers, and it's super simple. You just do it. You connect to theirs. Everything's taken care of. You don't have to deal with, all these XML feeds from like UPS or USPS. So it simplifies that, and they do real-time webhooks, address validation, and it's if you're shipping products, definitely check out Shippo. It's awesome.
Cool. What's the URL for Shippo?
It is GoShippo, GoShippo.com.
Awesome. And we appreciate having Shippo as a sponsor. And as a listener, we hope you'll check them out because they definitely make it possible for Eric and I to do what we do. So we definitely appreciate it. Everybody, I'm super honored this week to have a special guest. We've got Shawn McCool. If you have been listening to the official Laravel podcast for a long time, you might recognize him as being one of the founders of the original Laravel podcast. You might recognize that as the one that Matt Jeffrey and Taylor do from time to time now. So the other thing Shawn's been really instrumental in for a long time now is the LaraconEU conference. Now, if you're not familiar, Laracon US was just a couple weeks ago, and LaraconEU is coming up. Now, Shawn, I think when I first heard about these conferences, I might have assumed that they were all kind of put on by Taylor and the same people, but as I understand it, you kind of are the one that drives the European conference. Do you want to tell us a little bit about, what your role is and how you got involved, and then let's talk about the conference and what people can expect.
Hi, Jack. Yeah, so I went to the first Laracon, and I was actually a speaker there. And it was such a great experience. We got to meet all of the people who were working on different Laravel projects. And this was, really near the beginning. So everyone knew each other. It was a small group of people kind of helping to build and teach about the framework. Well, when we got home, we were thinking, man, that was amazing, but there's nothing like this in Europe. Let's have a meetup and just get to know everybody. Long story short, that meetup idea evolved into a conference, and then we had a 140-person conference in LaraconEU for our first year. And every year after that, more and more people came. We, kept needing to size up the conference and put on more and more of a bigger and bigger event. And then here we are in 2016 with maybe the biggest Laravel event in the world.
It sounds like it. I'm only aware of yours and the US one. And how big is yours? How many people are you expecting this year?
Yeah, we're going to have 650 people come and then 22 speakers. So we're going to be running around 680, 700 people, including staff and everybody.
Wow. That's huge. That's huge. Yeah. Laracon US was also pretty big, but I think you guys beat them by, I don't know if the Laracon numbers included staff or not, but you definitely have definitely beat them by a little bit there. So it's they're running neck and neck. I think the exciting thing, if you're in Laravel right now, or if you're just learning Laravel, this first podcast you've ever listened to about it, it just shows to me how vibrant and how alive the Laravel community is. Right, for there to be 600 plus people on both continents, both sides of the ocean, if you will, like that want to go to a conference, I think that's just amazing. Right, So Shawn, tell us a little about your format. What do you guys do for your conference?
So this year, every year we try some experiments. So we're some developers who kind of grew up talking about Laravel and sharing information with other people. And now we've come into conference organization, and we've done it 4 years in a row. I have another conference as well. So we're constantly trying to learn how to do a good job. So we rely on a lot on feedback. Every year we've had to explore so many new ideas. So this year we have 200 more attendees than we did last year. So some of the ideas and experiments we wanted to bring were to have multiple tracks. So previously, every conference had been a single track conference. We have everyone sitting in one room, 2 days of speeches, 1 day of workshops in the front, and that's it. Well, with this many people, we wanted to give also some more diversity to the content so that maybe there's something for everyone. And we divided the content into 2 separate tracks. We have one track that's heavily focused on Laravel and framework-related topics, and then another track that's focused on stuff like software architecture, testing, and some project management stuff. It's like a variety of things. And so we worked real hard to set that up so that there's really good content for all kinds of different roles in a company, because Laravel is really used a lot in companies where you have to wear multiple hats. There's a handful of highly talented individuals who are doing a lot of different jobs. And so I think it really makes sense to have content distributed amongst multiple topics. In addition to this, we have a third track, which is an unconference track. And the idea there is anyone can actually sign up for like a 30-minute, 40-minute slot and be able to stand up in front of people and give a presentation. So you can actually show up at the door with your ticket and come in and say, I want to sign up right away, and get your spot. And then, you're a speaker at the conference too, and you can get some stage experience, and you can get people, talking about your ideas. And so I think that's really fun, but it's really cool to have like 3 basic tracks of content, and one is completely wild card. We don't even know what to expect until we get there.
Yeah, Shawn, that multi-track, that thing seems kind of neat. You want to talk about some of your headliners this year, who's going to be presenting and what kind of things they're going to be teaching people?
Yeah, so we have, of course, Taylor Otwell. He created Laravel, and he's going to be talking about like the new versions of Laravel and kind of just give a state of the union. And at these conferences, he's always revealing something new. So I'm always excited to see what he has to say. I never know. He never tells me in advance. So it's always just, to me, brand new as everyone else. So that's fun. We also have Evan Yu, who is the creator of Vue.js. And I think there's a big cultural fit between Laravel developers and developers using Vue.js. I think that these tools really go together well. And so I'm really excited that Evan was interested in coming and attending and even giving a workshop at the conference. That's amazing. We also have Lily Dart, which may be one of the most exciting sessions for me to see. It's about using the metrics that you have already from your existing system and using those to do user experience design and stuff like this. So it's about like taking what you have and kind of, using all of the buffalo, so to speak, and really kind of using that information to drive improvements into your system. I'm really super excited about that. Then, of course, we have the obligatory experts of TDD here to give us some insight. We have talks on event sourcing and user stories, recommendation engine building with graph databases, which is really cool. If you ever needed to take somebody's search query and return an additional list of recommendations, that can be kind of hard without a graph database. But Christoph Willemsen is going to talk about how to do that with Neo4j, and I think that's going to be really neat. And, we have some really good stuff, how to effectively grow a development team, which I think is really relevant to the Laravel community. We're always, finding new developers, and it's a talent that has to be developed. And I like to see people talking about this as well.
Cool. Now, one thing I guess we should probably mention is, as we're doing this recording, which is, I think, Thursday the 11th, you still have a few tickets available. Is that correct?
Yes, we do. We had to set a limit on our attendance, and for logistical reasons, and we're reaching the end of that. We're basically going to sell out in advance of the conference. So by the time this actually gets aired out, there's a good chance that we'll already be sold out. But it's a good place to be. It means that we can pack a lot of content in and really tailor all of this to a known quantity. And so I think it's going to make a better experience to everyone than if we just kept that open.
It's so hard too, because as an event planner, you do have to know the earlier you know how many people you have, the better, right? It helps you get sponsorship. You know how many lunches you're negotiating over and all that kind of stuff. So if people wanted to find out more information, they go to, I assume this is Laracon.eu, right?
Yes, that's correct. Every single year, the Laracon's website are available forever, including all of the additional media, like every single recorded session we've ever released.
Nice. So if you're listening to this right now, and we're going to try to get this episode out a little bit earlier than our normal 2-week schedule, just so that folks going to LaraconEU can listen to it on the train or whatever. But if you happen to hear this and you're like, oh man, I forgot to ask, check over at Laracon.eu and see if there's still tickets available. And I suppose if you lived really close, I can tell you one little conference secret is that I don't know of a single conference that's ever turned away somebody at the door. So, but bottom line is, it sounds like a good conference there. So a lot of good speakers. Now you have Evan. He did a talk at Laracon US on Vue.js, and what's interesting is he was showing us the Vue 2.0 beta, which he said was kind of for the first time. When I chatted with him, it sounds to me like he might be coming out of beta with that maybe right around the time of your conference. So I'm kind of looking forward to see if does that mark his official release. And then Eric and I have an ongoing bet about like when is 5.3 coming out, right? And Taylor kind of talked about it a little bit at Laracon US, but he was like, it's not really ready yet. Like it's, he's still working on documentation and stuff like that. So there's a little bit of an internal pool going as to, will Taylor release that at your conference, or will he release it a little bit early? We're all kind of waiting to see when that hits, so lots and lots of good stuff there. Anything interesting about your venue this year? Is it the same one you did last year, or is it a different location?
No, this is one of the experiments we are making with this year, because our venue is this amazing industrial. It used to be a sugar factory, like a processing, and it's just
really
industrial metal beams everywhere, and then our staff builds it up. This is an amazing conference at an amazing venue. I'm so incredibly proud of being a part of it. If we didn't have such talented partners, nothing like this could have been done. I've never seen anything like this before.
So speaking of designers, I have to ask about this. Last year, you guys had the most outlandish, not only artwork, but I remember seeing some video where this artwork was being drawn in real time or something like that. What was the story behind that? That to me, when I watched that, I was like, what did they spend? They might have just looked like the kind of thing you'd spend $10,000 having done.
Yeah, no, that would be the cost. But we partnered with an incredible award-winning company that does design and animation called Superhero Cheesecake. And they use Laravel for all of their projects. And so they teamed up with us, became a sponsor, and provided this material. And it's just beautiful and amazing. And this is what I'm saying. The Laravel community has all of these incredibly multi-talented groups of people, and we're really lucky to have access to them. That's why, so many Laravel projects and so many Laravel things have such amazing design, where in other spaces you don't see that as often. It's just a really wonderful place to find people to work with and make incredible things.
That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about if somebody was, and I know most people have already probably registered and all that stuff, but in general, do you have any advice for giving a person if they are trying to convince either their boss or themselves or a spouse or whatever that going to a conference like this or any other really is a good investment in their money and time? One of the things I think sometimes people will say is, "Oh, well, I can watch the video online for free, so there's really no point in going." And I don't know about you, but my personal experience has been that I never end up spending that time to watch that video for free, right? It's out there, but I never sit through it like I do when I'm at the conference. So tell me what your thoughts are.
No, I think you're hitting on something there. When I organize a conference, I don't get the time to actually sit and watch all of the sessions. I'm lucky to watch a couple sessions, and give it my full attention. So I end up actually watching videos later online once they're produced, once they're uploaded, at the same time everybody else is watching them. So while I really do appreciate having those videos, and I know that the speakers appreciate having those videos to kind of try to get into more conferences and, use them to kind of highlight some of their skills, etc. I think that the biggest value is really being at a conference, meeting people who are doing the same kind of stuff you're doing, or meeting people who are doing similar stuff but different in a slightly different role that you can work with And later, weeks later, you can be talking to them about problems you're having, helping them with problems they're having. And you just end up with this support network and friendship where you have professional relationships that are also you just like being around them because you have things in common. To me, this is a primary benefit. I just really believe in support networks and mentorship roles and things like this in our industry. And if you go to a conference, these are the things that I think are the most valuable and will stay with you over time. To me, that's why I wanted to do conferences. These are events that are kind of entertaining, very educational, but give people a chance to get those relationships with others that can really change their life. Actually,
I agree with you 100%. The connections that you make at these things are important, and they're, I think, from a social perspective, and I don't know what it is about human beings, but it's kind of hard to become friends with people over the internet, right? Like even the people that you see on Twitter a lot, and you might even comment on their stuff and they comment on your stuff. All of those relationships hit a different level when you meet in person, right? For me, I feel like the most effective, I hate the term networking, but I guess the most effective networking has been actually at lunch at these events, when everyone kind of breaks out and you sit down at a table with some people you don't know and you're all kind of eating your sandwich, and someone starts talking about something that they're working on, or you ask somebody what it is that they do or whatever. That's pretty cool. One tip I want to share if you are going to a conference, and I'm horrible at this, but thankfully other people are better at it than I am, is if you have business cards, like put them in your bag right now. Like I know most people probably don't, you get the box of business cards from work and they sit on your desk. Like take them with you. And I was really lucky because I was talking to a few people, and as I was chatting with a guy, he just kind of like reached into his bag and he pulled out his business card and he handed it to me. And my problem is, like, if you meet, I don't know, let's just say you meet 50 or 100 people at a conference, you can't remember all of them. You don't remember whose Twitter, thing was what. So having that business card was really, really helpful. So I think if you're going and you don't have cards, maybe it's time to print some up on, some paper and cut them up in advance. Maybe it's a little cheesy, but it's better than being forgotten, right? And then if you have the cards, bring them with you. Because I think, Shawn, you hit the head on the nail in terms of the length of the value, right? Like if you watch a video or if you attend a session that lasts an hour, you have an hour's worth of value. But if you make a connection with a person and you keep that connection alive, that might be something that lasts you years or even a lifetime.
Yeah, and while that's true, like I believe that that's the core value. Also, I mean, you walk away having attended like 12 people's presentations about their ideas of something, and that you leave, I mean, just period, like at any conference where you're actually attending sessions, you leave changed, and you have this new breadth of knowledge in subjects and topics that you could have learned, but you haven't yet.
I think
and
that's
so. To me, that's
I agree.
benefit.
Like I remember at the last conference that I went to, the Laracon US, Ben Ramsey did a session on HTTP2 and kind of going into the background of that. And you're right. I could have learned all of that by reading, and quite frankly, if I was really aggressive at it, I might have been able to learn it in an hour, Yet at the same time, it was one of those things that I had just never pushed myself in that direction. The wind had never taken me there. And yet the wind took me to Laracon, and then his session kind of talked about that particular thing, and it was a neat thing to know about. It's the kind of thing I will make use of that knowledge someday down the road, and I'll be glad to have that foundation. One of the things, be curious of what your thoughts are, Shawn. I feel like with learning, a lot of times in our heads we feel like something's going to take a really long time to learn or a long time to master, and then we avoid it, right? And then what we find is that often it's not that it takes a long time to master or even to grasp, but it's that first step or two. There's this term that, that's been used forever called getting the ball rolling, right? A giant ball, like I always think of Harrison Ford running from that ball in Indiana Jones, if you've seen that movie. A giant ball takes some energy to get moving. It takes some effort. You have to push on it really hard to get it going. But once it starts going, it requires very little energy to keep going at that pace. And I feel like learning is that way. And when you go to a conference and you attend, like you said, 12 sessions, those are 12 get the ball rolling sessions in many cases. They introduce you to test-driven development or to Vue.js or to something that you've never really had time to sit down and kind of dive into. None of us are going to walk away from these things being experts, right? But that quick start, if you will, that hour of, okay, now I understand it, could mean that your next 5 hours you spend on that technology happens so much more efficiently and without stress. And maybe I'm the only one, Shawn, but like I feel like sometimes when I think about technology, like I love it, it's my passion, but it stresses me out too. I think about like, oh, I got to do this and I don't know how to do it, and you know what I mean. I don't maybe that.
Yeah, like a guilt, like I need to be doing this, and if I'm not performing up to this, then I need to pressure myself in some way to continue
There's that,
performing.
But also the stress of not understanding things. The stress of like, oh, this is new technology that I don't yet know how to do. And, there's so many things I would rather do than sit down and learn this just for the sake of learning it, right? Personally, I've always done the best when if I have a real project at work, like if work comes to me and says, we need you to understand X, Y, Z and do this project with it, like I'll pick that stuff up very quickly and I'll do fine with it. But in the back of my head, I'm also thinking, well, I should also know Vue.js and I should know this and I should know that. The time to learn those things, at least for me, it's always kind of a challenge. So I don't know. I feel like there's kind of, maybe that becomes two pillars of the conference. One, the tech talks, which give you that introduction to technologies you might not have had time otherwise to look into. And then two, the personal relationships that you build.
Well, really, I think that these events work on multiple levels. So you have those relationships, and then you have these ideas. And the way I think you were talking a little bit about your idea of like a figurative inertia when it comes to learning and knowledge gain. The way I think about it is like the humans have this neural network, and we're constantly through thinking, establishing connections between multiple networks of concepts. So when we want to learn something, one of the things the way I think about it is I learn a little bit about it in a way that's not costly. It doesn't stress me out. It doesn't, it's just a familiarity gaining. And after gaining familiarity for a while, it keeps building up, and my mind's able to make different connections. I can, improve my conceptual modeling, etc. And to me, just taking the first step to just gently start touching ideas makes it easier to continue the next step and the next step. So there's very much that whole concept of inertia and getting that ball rolling in my mind as well. But when you go to an event, you have this broad, like just a huge stroke of all kinds of different ideas. And your mind can be making new connections between those ideas and ideas that you've already had, etc., for months and months. It's something that embeds its way into your mind and changes the way you think about more things than you could really quantify. So I really love the fact that whenever you go to these events and you attend the sessions and you participate, like the whole experience works at you from so many different levels. And I think the reason people continue to go to serial conferences, etc., one conference after another, is because of that feeling of, oh wow, I'm so excited, I'm so motivated after these things. I'm more in love with my work, than I was before, and I just love the passion from the attendees, the passion from the speakers, the passion from the organizers. It's a fun thing to do. This is a fun thing for me to spend my time on. So I really believe in these events tremendously.
Shawn, as you were saying all that stuff, one of the things that rung true with me is you were talking about this kind of like layers of exposure making you more comfortable with technology and things like that. And it wasn't too long ago, I just read, and when I say read, I mean I listened to the Audible book, right, from Audible. This book called The Master of Disguise by Antonio Mendez. And what this guy was, he worked for the CIA, and he kind of documents some of the stuff that he used to do and whatever. What was really interesting in there is he talked about they would try to recruit other countries' spies to be our spies. And they would not just like walk up to a guy and be like, hey, you want to be a spy, right? Like they knew that didn't work, right? So what they would do is they would make themselves like visible, like they would be at the same coffee shop all the time and that kind of stuff, right? Like, and it was really interesting because I think there's like this element of human nature that we all kind of are afraid of, or we reject things that are brand new, but we somehow absorb and make our own things that we've been repeatedly like made visible or whatever. So in terms of these conference talks, and as you were talking about with learning, I feel that in my own world. Like I'm honestly like, people that listen to this podcast know that by day I do SharePoint stuff. I only dabble in Laravel, and yet being around all of this Laravel stuff and just talking about it, I have a much better understanding of it today than I did a year ago. And yet I really haven't done that much work in Laravel in the last year, if that makes any sense. I mean, I do a little bit here and there, but not nearly as much as some of these folks who are doing it full time and are really, knee deep into it. And yet I feel like I'm still learning because of this exposure.
Yeah. Humans are amazing. When you are young, you are nervous about eating new foods. You resist it. You don't like the taste. And that's just because the familiarity isn't there. Over time with exposure, that changes. And this is just like a recurring theme in humanity.
Yeah, that sure is. Well, Shawn, thank you so much for being on the show, and have a great conference. I know it's going to be awesome, and I look forward to hearing feedback from both you and from everybody who attends it that talks about the different sessions that they were at and how those sessions kind of touch them and what have you. For those of the people that are listening that don't know you, do you just want to share your your information, where do people find you on Twitter and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, literally, I'm Shawn McCool, one word everywhere. So twitter.com/Shawn McCool. ShawnMC.cool is my website, my blog. And yeah, I mean, you can find me so easy.
Wait a minute. Are you saying, is there a cool domain?
There is. It's Shawn, so I have ShawnMC.cool. It may be the coolest domain on the internet. I don't know, but I'm biased.
I'm pretty sure it's the coolest domain on the internet. I mean, that's ShawnMC.cool. That's awesome. Yeah. And again, if you're listening to this, go check it out. LaraconEU. If there's tickets available, then be lucky and go get one and network and expand your connections and everything. Shawn, thanks again for being on the show. We look forward to hearing about LaraconEU. I know it's going to be a great success. Everybody, I'm super excited to announce our next podcast guest, and that is, I'm going to say his name wrong, so I'm going to ask you to say your name. It's Freek. How do you say let's go ahead and say your whole name, Freek.
Okay, here we go again. Freek van der Herten.
Okay. So for those of us who are in like on my side of the pond here in America, I know I'd have no chance of saying that right. So sorry for botching it. But one thing I can definitely assure anyone who's listening is that my inability to say this guy's name is not at all indicative of how much work you've done. So for those of you who don't know, do you own Spatty? Is Spatty your firm? Is that?
Yeah, I'm a co-owner. So we're with 3 owners.
Okay, so one of 3 owners of a web. Yeah, I guess you'd call it a web design firm, Spatty,
yeah.
And they're in Belgium, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure people, like, to me at this point, you guys are legendary. But if you're listening to this and you don't already know, Spatty has done how many packages have you done now for Laravel? Are you up to 60 or something, or is it more than that?
I think it's for Laravel. It will be around 60. I think. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's so much great stuff. And you have really good documentation on all of those as well, right? These aren't just like go to the GitHub page. You've got like a whole website dedicated to these packages and everything.
Yeah. For our big packages, we have a site for that, but for the smaller ones, it's just GitHub.
But you still have I thought I remember you have a site
documentation. It just doesn't exist.
But you do have a site that lists all the packages, right? Isn't there like a kind of a landing page?
Yeah, on our company website, there's a list of them.
Okay, and for those listening, what's the URL of the website, and how do they find that listing? And I guess that would be today, because I did see you tweet that you guys were going to redo that site. So
yeah, so it's spatie.be, so spatia.be/open source.
Okay, and that has all your packages.
And that's all the packages.
Now, the reason we have you on the show, of course, is we're coming up with LaraconEU, and you're going to be doing a talk there about what I think is my favorite package ever. So do you want to tell our listening audience about your talk and about what you're going to be talking about?
Yeah, so my talk is going to be on taking care of backups with Laravel. I'm going to touch on the package, of course. I'm going to demonstrate how it works, and I'm also going to into the code, because we're in a room full of developers, so it makes sense just to take a look behind the curtains. But I'm also going to talk about backups in general and things that can go wrong with it, things you you should do. So it's not only about the package. That's the plan.
Okay. And the package that you're talking about right now, just for those of you who, we've talked about this before on the podcast, but if you haven't listened to every episode, the package is called Spatty Backup. I think V3 is what you're on right now, right? This is the most current version. And I can attest to this because I use it myself. It's a wonderful, wonderful backup package. And I could go on and on about it, but bottom line is if you have anything in production and you don't yet have really, you should be using this backup tool, I think is the simplest way to put it. Then you definitely want to check out this talk that Freek is doing because it is such a great tool. And let me just tell you, like for myself personally, I thought this was going to be kind of complicated to install. I created a Dropbox provider. So what happens is the backup uses Fly System as its destination. And you can do Dropbox, but there wasn't like a provider in Laravel. But as it turned out, the examples that were on the Laravel documentation are examples that you would need to create the Dropbox thing. Now, those of you who listen all the time, you know that Eric's kind of the smart one and I'm kind of the beginner. I figured this stuff out, folks. So if I can figure it out, I know any of you can. And it is just so amazing, so awesome to be like sitting at your computer and all of a sudden you look up and like a file has automatically been added to your Dropbox. Like not only do you know it's backed up, but you know you have a copy of it right there in case something goes wrong. And the reason I think this is so important is we've learned through denial of service attacks and through failures of ISPs or cloud providers that even if you have backups being performed, like for example, when I started this, I was using DigitalOcean's backups and they'll make a backup of your VM like I think once a week or something like that. But it's kind of a whole VM backup. It's not like just of the certain folders that you might want to go grab a file from. And I don't know that I can say that it's unreliable, but again, if they were to undergo a denial of service, then you're not going to be able to get in to get your backup, right? So anyway, I think it's a great package, and I can't even say enough thanks for creating it because it's not only saving me a little bit of money every month, but it's also giving me so much peace of mind. The other thing I think is great about it is it's got this like really like amazing common sense like backup rotation system built into it. And what I mean by that is like, if you've ever thought about backups, like you don't just want one every day because then like 2 years from now, you're gonna have like 700 backups. You kind of want like one every day for a certain number of days. And you want like maybe a weekly one for a certain number of weeks. And you want like a monthly one for a certain number of months. But on the days when like let's say you did a weekly and a monthly, well, you don't want two of them to happen on the same day when that daily and when the monthly one happens, right? So like, I don't know, this thing just takes care of all the rotation. Like it's just magic. It's just automatic. It's just perfect. So,
thanks.
now you've been to LaraconEU last year. Do you have any advice to share with people about maybe getting the most of the venue or of the place or their time there or things that you really enjoyed or anything like that?
Let me start by saying that LaraconEU last year was the best conference I went to ever, really. Wow. And that was mainly because of the people there, because it's being said a lot about our community, that our community is very friendly. And at LaraconEU, you can really see that, everybody is just friendly with each other. You can just go and chat. Everybody's really open about the stuff they do. So if I have one recommendation, go talk to everybody between the sessions, because you can learn so much by just doing a chat with other people. So that would be my main advice if you were to go to Laracon. Now, last year the talks were very good as well. I remember the keynote. It was by Matt Stauffer about empathy. That was really, really great. It's such a shame that Matt will not be able to attend this year's Laracon. But there are a lot of other great speakers this year as well. So it will be great again. I know it.
Right. And for those of you who don't know, Matt has not dropped out of the Laracon space or anything like that. What he has done is he has enlarged his family by one new person. And he had a baby recently, so that was his reason for not speaking. He wasn't at Laracon US either this year, but I'm sure next year he'll be back in the swing of things. And he's also working on a book, which I understand should be coming out. I thought I saw like October as a publisher's date on that one. In fact, you looked over the book, didn't you? You seemed like you liked it.
Yeah, I read an advanced copy of it with all the chapters in it except the Laravel 5.3 stuff because that wasn't out yet. And if I understand correctly, then even Matt doesn't have preview access to the unannounced feature, so the book wasn't; those chapters weren't written yet. But it's really great. I thought, this is a book for beginners. So if you don't have experience with the framework, then this is your book. But as I was reading it, in every chapter there was little things I picked up that I had never seen before. So I'm sure that everybody with a little bit of Laravel experience will get something out of the book as well. So I can really recommend it to everybody. It's really written.
I'm looking forward to it. I think one for the content, but the other thing is I personally still like the old paper books as opposed to ebooks. And a lot of the stuff that's been released has been ebook only. So I'm actually looking forward to just having a printed copy that I can sit on and not sit on, but sit on my desk and and mark up with a marker and things like that. So that should be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, any other tips for Laracon attendees? Let me ask, because you're going to be a speaker this year. What is your feeling on people coming up and just saying hi to you that don't know you? Are you think you're okay with that?
I'm perfectly fine with that. That's what conferences are for, just to talk with people. So people see me, they can just go do a little talk with me. I know that I will be doing that as well. If I'm standing next to anybody, then I'll just go talk to them, because that's why there's a conference.
Yeah. Hey, there's one more thing that's on my mind that I want to ask you about, and this conference would probably be a great opportunity for people to do this. All of your extensions, all of your code for Laravel used to be completely free to use, and you recently started charging for them. Do you want to tell people about what the payment is? And I assume that they can just give you this payment in person if they see you at the conference, right?
Yeah. That's no problem. So we have a lot of Laravel packages, like we already mentioned during this talk, and they were all free. But since I think 2 weeks, we've been asking to send us postcards of your hometown. So if one of our packages makes it into your production environment, you are required by the license of our package to send us a postcard of your hometown. And what we are going to do with those cards is we're currently redesigning our company website, and on the open source page of the new site, we will put screenshots of the cards and where they were sent from. So that's a neat little project. So if you meet me at Laracon and use one of our packages, give me a postcard.
Awesome. A small price to pay for such great work.
Yeah, I think so too.
It reminds me of, so there's an old American movie, so you may not know of it, and I wonder how many of our listeners are going to know about it. Steve Martin was in this movie called The Jerk, and he went to work for some guy at a gas station who let him like sleep in a spare room or something like that. And he said, well, how much is this going to cost me? And the guy said something like, if you ever get rich, send me a postcard, right? So then later in the movie, Steve Martin has this invention and he gets all this money and he sends the guy a postcard. So they show the guy like, he's at the gas station, the mail gets dropped off and he looks and he's like, oh, yeah, sure enough, the guy sent me a postcard. That was what he did. So I don't know why that reminds me of that, but a funny movie for sure. Well, thank you so much for being on. I thank you again for the backup stuff and all the other things that you've done. And I'm sure that your talk is going to be awesome. I'm not going to be there because I'm over on this side. So I just went to Laracon US a couple weeks back, but I know it's going to be a great show. And everyone that's been to it has always said great things about it. So if you yourself are going, then I think you should be sitting in on this session, and everyone's going to have a good time, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm really looking forward to it.
Awesome. Hey, one more thing while I think about it. You mentioned right before we started recording that there's kind of like a free-for-all session and that you were going to try to talk at that too. Do you want to mention that real quick?
Yeah, so LaraconEU will have an Uncon this year. So if you don't know what it is, that's just basically an extra room in the conference. where everybody is allowed to speak. There's usually a schedule in front of the door of that room where you can just put your name in a time slot, and then you can just talk about whatever you want. And I can really recommend, if you want to start speaking, just try it at an on-con. The length doesn't matter, the level of the talk doesn't matter. It's just for you to practice. As an attendee of a conference, I've seen some pretty great talks there by beginning speakers. And yeah, this year I'm going to try, if there's a little room left, to give an on-con talk as well about our dashboard project we made a couple of months ago. So yeah, that's cool. I wish every conference had an on-con.
That sounds really cool. I'm going to talk to Shawn about that and see what he has to say. That sounds like a neat idea. Well, thanks again for being on the podcast, and we'll have to have you on again. I know there's plenty of stuff you've got to cover, so I look forward to seeing what's next from you. Okay,
till next time, Jack.
All right, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Hey, speaking of LaraconEU, Eric, did you hear Taylor mentioned, I guess, that that is in fact going to be the official release date for 5.3?
Yeah, that's the rumor. I believe I seen it on Twitter. He said that he's going to make the official announcement there. So that should be probably either that Monday or Tuesday, whenever his first talk is.
Awesome. So if you're listening to this episode, which is episode 24, just so you know, episode 25, assuming that 5.3 actually does ship between now and then, is going to be all about 5.3 and kind of how things laid out in the final thing. We're hoping to have some special guests on that show as well, people who have been kind of blogging and doing things with 5.3 so far. One of our guests I'm hoping to have on is Jason, is it McCreary? I think he's the guy that did that Laravel shift. Have you seen that before?
Oh, yeah. And then he gave the talk at LaraconEU on YAGNI.
I forget what was that abbreviation for? You remember?
I can't remember either. You're not going to need it. That's what it is. You ain't going to need it.
You ain't going to need it. That was it. Yeah. That was a good talk. He was he was very personable. So just a reminder, because I guess that shift service, the people who have used it say it works pretty well. If you're not familiar with it, it's that thing that lets you upgrade Laravel from one version to another. Mm-hmm. I guess he must have written a bunch of find and replace scripts that do everything magically.
Yeah. I'm not sure how it works, but yeah, I've heard the same. I heard it works well.
Yeah, me too. So awesome. Well, thanks everybody for listening. And this episode is probably going out a little early, so I would guess that we'll see you in just a little bit over 2 weeks. We'll try to get back to our regular every other Tuesday schedule.
Have a great week.
This concludes this episode of the Laravel News Podcast. If you like the show, please rate it 5 stars on iTunes. If you have feedback for the podcast, please email us at podcast@laravel-news.com. Thanks for listening.